What's good, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of Ballin' from the Sidelines. And today I got one of my hometown homies, one of my boys from back in the day. He gonna be hopping on this podcast for this episode and a bunch of others. So yeah, introduce yourself, give you shout outs, who they looking to right now.
What's up, guys? My name's Owen Kearney. Here to talk about some Danny Ainge stuff today, and podcast later on. We're gonna get a little political, but it'll be fun. So I'm glad to be here for sure.
Yes, sir. This gonna make a lot of people angry or happy because this is a really polarizing topic. Me and him are both from Mass, born and raised in Mass, and Danny Ainge is either you loved him for all these years, you hate him now, or you're a loyalist, or you want to see him out. So, the topic for this episode is how would you rate Danny Ainge's legacy in Boston as the Celtics GM? What would be your review, your assessment of it? We can even give a grade, a letter grade if you want. But yeah, this is just reviewing his legacy in hindsight. How good was he, or how bad was he, or how mediocre was he? So let me let Kearney start off with his takes on it. Because as we know, last week Danny Ainge voluntarily stepped down as GM. That's another question mark. Do some people think he did it out of choice? Some people think there was, pressure and closed doors about it. So yeah, Kearney, let's see what you got to say about it.
Well, if we're doing letter grades, I'm gonna keep it really school-wise and break it up into semesters. So
Yeah.
Danny Ainge's first part of his GM stint, his first semester, fall semester, I would definitely give him probably an A. Second semester, what we've seen the past 5 years, it's been up and down. Like, best way I could categorize it would be like slightly above average, probably like a B minus. I personally think that he stepped down through his own pressures because he hasn't really been the guy that we needed. I feel like the game's kind of passed him by in some sense, and I'll get on to talk about that. But I think that was his own personal decision. I don't know what you think about that, but that's how I viewed it when he stepped down.
Yeah, I definitely think it was through his own will. I remember a few months ago, the Celtics owner gave a statement saying that both Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens we're going to stick with them. We have full faith in them, and we're just gonna let them weather the storm because there's this turbulences whenever you're dealing with a sports franchise with a storied history as illustrious as the Boston Celtics. There's going to be pressure, and the owner basically said you know, um, there are guys, and if you look at the way the Celtics have been, really since 2013 when that trade happened, it's just been full on complete trust and free will given to Danny Ainge and as much time as he needs to do what he needs to do. So there's really no reason for us to believe that he was pressured into resigning. Sure seems like, given the history and the track record of how the Boston Celtics have been, the way the organization has been run, that it was really Danny Ainge's will to leave. Thank God. I'm the happiest man on earth. When I heard that news, I was the
I
happiest
feel
man.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, you got some more points to add, or you want
Yeah. So for me, like, if we go back to 2017 when we had all those draft picks and we had all those potential free agents, remember KD came to Boston and we had like Tom Brady and David Ortiz talking to him. There was so much buzz around the future of the Celtics. And at the time, we thought the future could potentially be Kyrie, KD, and AD, or a combination of any two with Tatum or something like that because of all the draft picks we had. And that right now has turned into Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and really not a ton of pieces around them. And I love Jason Tatum and I love Tatum and Brown. Don't get me wrong, but it's definitely a little disappointing that we don't have a superstar on the roster right now. Tatum's ascending, but at the moment he can't be the number one player on a championship team.
no doubt about it.
And then we fast forward to 2019 after we lost the Bucks, and Kyrie sort of, in a way, got run out of town because of his bad play against the Bucks. But if you look at that series, I got the splits right here. Kyrie had a bad series, 20 points per game on 36% shooting, but Jason Tatum had 12 points per game on 36% shooting. Hayward, the man who were paying $35 million because Ainge and Brad Stevens wanted this guy, had 8 points per game in 28 minutes on 34% shooting. Rozier shot 16%, and Marcus Smart, although he was injured in the series, shot under 10% in the games that he played. So there was way more issues with the Celtics than Kyrie Irving. However, I do understand that Kyrie Irving is a weird person and unconventional, and the way he meshed with Boston Celtics fans in particular, like are the Larry Bird era fans, are really like sort of anti-personal player expression. They're like about the shield and the actual team in the Celtics. But nowadays, a lot of these superstars, KD, LeBron, Kyrie, are opening up schools and really political and out there and say crazy shit and are on social media. And some of it is really good. I truly believe that. But it's also polarizing. So you do have fans that, in a way, were glad that Kyrie left. However, that's where I'm saying I think the game has passed him by because you need a player like that on your team. I mean, we really haven't been a threat since then, unless you think last year we were, but we lost the Miami Heat, and they were not the best Eastern Conference team to come out the past few years. The East was really weak that year. And we used to talk about LeBron all the time, be like, oh, Celtics fans would be like, oh, he only makes the finals because they're so weak in the East. And then they're like, oh, but look at us. We made the Eastern Conference finals. It's like, well,
Yeah,
it's the same Eastern Conference. Like, you can't have it both ways.
the paradox.
Yeah, so I feel like Celtics fans are so delusional in that fact that they think that the Celtics are so great. Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens are so great, but we're not getting out of the weak Eastern Conference. So I don't know. That's how I felt about it. I felt like it was his decision. It needed to happen. Game passed him by. The way he built the 08 team was perfect. And those 4-year block we had, perfect. But next 6 years or whatever it was, just needed to go, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so let me start off by saying that Danny Ainge was the biggest fraud in pro sports, most
Yo, chill.
irrationally
That's too
heralded
much.
man of the 21st century in pro sports, the biggest hoodwinker in pro sports, the biggest choker. I don't even know how you can be this big of a choker when you don't even step on the court this century, but he was still the biggest choker. Like he would. People want to say Peyton's a big time
That's a
choker,
little
Aaron Rodgers,
disrespectful.
A-Rod.
That's a little disrespectful, bro. I don't know.
I'm gonna empty the bag, so this disrespects me turn into rationale reasoning
He
once I'm
did
done with
fleece
it.
the Nets. He did get us a ring. Like he had a lot of good moves his first few years. I will
I'm,
say
I'm,
that.
I'm gonna get into that. So yeah, first, yeah. So first, like we currently start off by giving his grades on like a semester basis. That was a good idea, but like you forgot one chunk of time. So you basically started off from the '08 era when he brought us the chip, but he
Yeah,
took over in 2003 as
you're
the
right.
GM.
You're right.
He was classified and recognized as a piss poor GM from 2003 to 2007. The Celtics were god awful. We had a superstar in Paul Pierce that was really, if you look back, Paul Pierce, when it comes to crunch time and closing, he was on the same level as Kobe Bryant,
Dwayne Wade.
Carmelo Anthony, all
Yeah.
those other closers. He was big time. He carried us in Eastern Conference Finals one year. With Antoine Walker as his second best player, which I mean, Antoine Walker he had a decent career, but he's not your ideal running mate. So Pierce was really putting the team on his shoulders. He had the superstar DNA. Everyone knew he was a superstar. He was a bad boy. But the Celtics just got awful. Like the Boston Garden was not selling out. It was empty arenas, and we just turned into the laughing stock of the NBA. It was terrible to see. It was really like kind of what we saw with the Lakers this past decade when they were god awful. The Celtics was always a storied franchise. Same with the Lakers were, but we were just terrible. So yeah, he was recognized as a terrible GM at that point. And there were rumblings, Paul Pierce wanting out and, just thinking like we got to blow up this team because, we can't really surround him with any talent. And, Paul Pierce he can't win a chip on his own. Like this team's just terrible. And I believe Paul Pierce even requested a trade. I'm not sure. think there's a little bit of, um, you know, inconspicuousness about like if he really requested a trade or not, but it was rumored that he wanted out.
Yeah, that was like insider rumor, kind of like Aaron Rodgers shit we got going on. Like I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was on the table. I mean, the real there were it was it was clear as day that there was friction because when you're as great of a player as Paul Pierce was, and your prime years are gonna waste away, you're gonna be tight about it. You're gonna be mad. So fast forward to 2007 when the Boston Three Party was built, the Big Three. So yeah, on draft day we traded for Ray Allen. Great move, good move. I can't complain. That was a good move. Best shooter in basketball. We traded for Ray Allen. But Paul Pierce and Ray Allen, that's not a duo that would have brought home a chip. I'm gonna be honest. If it was just Paul Pierce and Ray Allen, Eastern Conference Finals, yeah. But I don't think we would have outlasted the Pistons in the conference finals, and we probably would have had issues beating LeBron as well. Just because Ray Allen's a great player, but he's not all around. He's not as all around as you would want. Even though he's a good defender, but he can't have the type of impact that Kevin Garnett will have or a Paul Pierce would have. It was clear that he was the third best player in that big three. So then later, weeks later, maybe a month later, that same offseason, we traded for Kevin Garnett, KG, former defensive player of the year, superstar, as big time as it gets. And like people look back and say, oh my God, Danny Ainge built this dynasty with his bare hands, with his own intellect, with his own negotiation skills, just shrewd businessman mentality of wanting to chase that ring and building a good product for the fan base that's as storied and loyal as ever with the Boston Celtics. Most chips in basketball still to this day. Actually, wait, no, I think they're tied with the Lakers now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're tied.
Yeah, they tied last year, but at that time, they were number one, 16 chips, and the Lakers had 14 at that time. But think deeper. Look at what happened. Look at the actual agreement when we traded for Kevin Garnett. We traded two protected first-round picks. Two protected first-round picks for an in their prime superstar. Like KG was still in his prime. Yeah, he was there like 30 years old, but he was still his production was the same as it was when he was in his 20s, his late 20s, mid 20s. And two protected first-round picks, along with Al Jefferson, who was, he wasn't an all-star. He wasn't anywhere close to in the discussion for best center in the NBA. And he averaged 16 points per game, 11 rebounds in the last season in Boston, which is, was like, it's all right. Like that's not all-star level production. And the years before that, he was averaging 6 points per game and 7 points per game. So Al Jefferson, he's not moving the needle in a normal scenario for you to acquire a guy like Kevin Garnett. Then they traded Gerald Green was part of that deal as well. So one might ask, well, how did Danny Ainge do this? How did he bring Kevin Garnett for two protected first-round picks? And for some of you who don't really know like the business side of basketball that well, a protected pick means that if it's a lottery pick, you won't be compensated for that pick. There will be an alternative pick awarded to the team, usually maybe 2 second-rounders or another first rounder that's also protected, where if it ends up being a lottery again, it'll get pushed down or what have you. There's different agreements that are in the fine print. So how did he do this? Simple answer. It's very easy. It's a very simple answer as to why it happened and how it happened. Danny Ainge's homie, one of his big homie, his best friend, was employed by the Minnesota Timberwolves at the time. Kevin McHale, the guy he won rings with in Boston during the Bird days. He was the GM of the Minnesota Timberwolves at that time. That was his best friend. That was his big homie. So, there was a connection there. And Kevin McHale already knew that KG wanted out of Minnesota. It's clear as day. The same reason Paul Pierce. You're in your prime. You're as good as it gets. And you're wasting your prime years without a ring. Like, he deserved a ring too. So he thought, you know what? He already wants out. And, that's my boy Danny Ainge over there. That's like I chill with him. I golf with him in the offseason and all that. Let me give him Kevin Garnett for two protected first-round picks and really no all-stars or even borderline all-stars or people in the conversation making all-star team before. So if Kevin McHale was not employed by the Minnesota Timberwolves at that time, say it was a completely other GM, like someone else, Kevin Garnett probably isn't in Boston right now, bro. Kevin Garnett would not have landed in Boston. So that 08 ring, kiss that goodbye, throw it out the door. That would have never happened. All right, cool, but it did happen. So like, let me be a little bit nice to Danny Ainge. You know what? Sometimes you're better off.
Too. There was a lot of questions about Rondo coming out too, because he kind of slid a little bit because he had temper problems and stuff.
Great point. So yeah, let me get back to that point though, because of we're kind of dealing with the big. Actually, you brought up Rondo. Actually, no, let me just continue with this big three thing. All right, cool. Sometimes you're better off being lucky than good. That's the old saying. You're better off lucky than good. All
True,
right,
true.
cool. Yeah. So you got Kevin Garnett inside connections. I mean, shit. It's like the real world. Like sometimes it's about who you know and not how good you are. Like we already know how that works. We graduated from college. We see some of our boys get in these positions and we got better grades than them. How did they do it? They got a family member or a homie that works over there, gave them a good referral, or who's in hiring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, but you still have to factor that in though. If Kevin McHale was not over there, there would be no chip, there would be no trophy in '08. So really you gotta that gives you a good perspective of how you look at the way he built that team. You can't really give him all that much credit as we give him for. You can't because Kevin Garnett was the biggest piece we added, and there was, there was inside trading happening with that and kind of favoritism. All right. But they landed there. We got that chip. So any other good GM, all right, we won our championship, but you're only as good as your last season. The championship team gets outdated or outnumbered quick. Like it only takes one off season for you to go from being the king of the hill to being, there's another team in a different city that's just as good of us or has actually got better Vegas odds than us to win a chip.
Lakers
So
right
what
now.
yeah, exactly. So what did Danny Ainge do to, sustain this reign at the zenith of basketball? Absolutely nothing. What was the biggest acquisition he made to, maintain that championship core and keep add another trophy in the trophy case? He he acquired Jermaine O'Neal, an over the hill Jermaine O'Neal in the summer 2010. Over the hill, Jermaine O'Neal, and then he signed Shaq, an old Shaq. That was even years later. That was already when the Big Three was assembled. We're already removed, and the Big Three is already aging at this point. But
That was
2010,
2011, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's 2011. But 2010, that was when we lost to the Lakers in the finals, and Kendrick Perkins got hurt. So we'll still think, that ring was ours. You can't control injuries. So Pat Riley, another a real GM who really is committed to bringing the best product to the table to the market, like Pat Riley, he would have been on his P's and Q's trying to trade for somebody, sign for somebody.
Moving the
The
bar
Celtics,
though, Pat Riley is like widely recognized as debatably the best GM of all time. The
exactly,
question
but
was whether or not Danny Ainge was successful or not. Like you're changing
nah,
the
bro. But you got to pay
conversation. Like,
attention to the conversation, the climate when when Danny Ainge was still it had a good will, had a good reputation on ESPN. People are saying Danny Ainge is the best GM in basketball. They're like people, the broadcasters saying Danny Ainge is a genius. He knows he's very analytical. He waits for the right move. He's just a smart guy. And
yeah,
we
but
live in we
you
live in
just went off
Massachusetts,
counterfactuals
huh?
for you just went off counterfactuals and hypotheticals to get Danny Ainge put down the bar, but you could do the same thing for Pat Riley. What if Shaq and Kobe never, broke up? Shaq's on in Miami. There's no ring there. Like,
No,
you
but
know
I'm
what
saying
I'm
in
saying? You
Miami
can't
when he
at,
built
at,
that
at
when
the
he
end of
built that
the day,
big three with getting LeBron and Bosh, right? So after they won that chip against the Thunder, the first chip, right? He kept his foot on the pedal, bro. What did he do? He acquired Shane Batty and Ray Allen, two great role players, splendid, spectacular role players, and they paid huge dividends when they beat the Spurs the next year. Danny Ainge just didn't do that. He just did not. He thought that. I mean, looking back, it was just really that same mentality as he did after getting all those lion share worth of assets from the Nets and the Sixers. Really, just sit on my ass, and it's gonna come to us. You don't rock the boat. But it really doesn't make sense why he did that.
I
And
mean, we acquired role players too. I mean, we got Jeff Green, Avery Bradley, Brandon Bass. Like we had people in and out
Jeff
of there.
Green, but that was a dumb trade though. Trading Kendrick Perkins, we had Nanad Kristich as our starting center. Like
Yeah.
that exposes intellect right there. Of like, we literally just lost the NBA Finals the year before because Kendrick Perkins got hurt. We need a guy to bang down low in the paint. An energy muscle
Kirk
guy.
wasn't going to be that answer though. I don't think anymore. However, Jeff Green wasn't the answer either, but I don't think Perk was the answer going forward either.
I don't know. I feel like Perk still had 2-3 years of really good productivity left in him.
2 3 years of
The Thunder wasn't a good
five
fit.
rebounds in 30 minutes, dude. The Thunder didn't do it. It wasn't Kendrick Perkins that propelled the Thunder. It was James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and Kevin
Yeah,
Durant.
but like I said, like the Thunder just weren't a good fit for him. For a guy who's a high energy player, he was really just like, fit into our system really well. He wasn't a really athletic or really gifted player. He was just a guy who perfectly fit into the system. And when you sent him all the way to Oklahoma City, role players with role players, they're once you send them to different scenery, they fall off oftentimes, more often than not, because it's really the system, the pieces that you put around them to bring them at their best.
Yeah,
For
they're very
example,
independent.
yeah, for example, James Posey going to the Hornets or Leon Poe going to the Cavaliers. Like all these really good role players, when you send them off somewhere else, they just don't do as well. Like Tristan Thompson as well. He hasn't really been. And once he left Cleveland, he wasn't really that guy. There's a lot of people like that, bro. And Kendrick Perkins, he was just really hitting on all cylinders with us. It wasn't a and to really just didn't make sense because we lost the championship the year before because we didn't have Perkins, he got hurt. So that was just dumb. Another dumb decision on his part was not re-signing Tony Allen when we had his bird rights. We could have given him we could have given him more money. I really don't know why we did not re-sign Tony
We had
Allen.
mid-level exception money too to burn. Yeah, we
And what
really.
did Tony Allen go on to be? He went on to be the best defensive two guard of his generation of that decade.
Three-time NBA All Defensive First Team and three-time Second Team.
I mean, the accolades speak for himself. Like,
Yeah, he probably has the same amount of defensive teams as like guys like Klay Thompson though. So he's definitely top
no,
five.
bro,
I'd say
actually,
that.
Klay Thompson has never even made an All NBA Defensive First Team.
I thought he had two.
yeah, which shows you how messed up and how like
Wow.
nonsensical these selections are. That's a good topic to do for another day. But anyway, yeah, but not re-signing Tony, that was just dumb. That didn't make any sense. And then he signed like Jason Terry. I mean, he thought that Jason Terry could be the Tony Allen replacement. But that just didn't work because we needed the Celtics. The Celtics calling card from day one when we won that chip was defense, and Tony Allen brought that, and he was our best role player. He was our best bench player in that 2010 championship run. All right, cool. So we brought all that stuff up as well. And now let's talk about what he did. What he did after getting that lion's share worth of picks from the Nets. First, let me start off by saying that was a genius move. That was actually no.
That was a good move, man.
Let me digress.
That was
It was a great move. It was an amazing move. But was it a genius move by Danny Ainge? Actually, it was not really. It was more the Brooklyn Nets stupidity as opposed to
I
Danny
wouldn't
Ainge.
say that because the Nets were thirsty, right? The Nets thought that they were in the position which two solid starters, veteran starters away from being a contender. They were wrong, but Danny Ainge found the team that
Yeah,
thought they were two players away.
but they definitely overpaid. They overpaid, and the
Yeah.
reason why they overpaid was because they just had their brand new owner was a Russian billionaire who had never set foot on a basketball court.
Until he bought the team.
Absolutely no knowledge of basketball. He didn't have a basketball background. He was just a billionaire. He wanted to buy that attractive Brooklyn Nets team because they just gentrified Barclays area. Brooklyn's coming up, bro. This is a
Beautiful town, dude. I was there last
yeah,
summer. It's gorgeous.
exactly. Brand new reboot. There was like New Jersey Nets, nobody cared about it. Now they're the Brooklyn Nets, bro. They got Jay-Z as like a minority owner. Like they're popping, bro. And they got that billionaire owner. He has no basketball intellect. He's never set foot on a basketball court before. He's just in win now mode. He gives Andre Karolinko a max contract, bro. He's just throwing money out. He's just aiming to please at this point. Like, and we found out, coming to find out, he wasn't really in it for like being a basketball owner. He just wanted to bring a chip and like, because when you win a ring, it's more money. You know how much money you make when you bring a ring with
Merch.
yeah, bro. And then once they were trash, or they weren't really trash. I mean, they made the they didn't make the Eastern Conference Finals. Maybe they did. No, they didn't.
I think they only won one playoff series.
Yeah, they won one playoff series. They made the playoffs though. They made the playoffs a couple years. But once they fell off, he sold the team right away. So that told you where his heart was. His heart was just trying to just go for the home run, not trying to be a smart owner. So again, that's another thing. That's another asterisk. Like we could say it's not. We can't put that move on the same level as Jerry Jones trading Herschel Walker to the Minnesota Vikings to catapult that dynasty because that was a real football move. I mean, Herschel Walker, like he was a good running back. Everyone thought he had all the potential in the world to continue on and actually raise the bar and be even better than just a Pro Bowl running back. But in the late 80s, the Minnesota Vikings had some good teams. It was a very adept franchise. The management knew what they was doing. One year in the late 80s, they really made Montana look bad. They beat the 49ers in divisional round. You know, it was a big upset. So the Vikings, you know, the fact they made that deal with Herschel Walker, it was a smart franchise. It wasn't we can't say it was run by a bunch of bozos like a Russian owner who has completely no knowledge of the sport. But that's what's called a real negotiation, like a real move where you could say like it took shrewd business skills to make. You know, the Vikings, they were a good team at that time. They're a great football club. They made the greatest quarterback ever at that time, who retired as the greatest quarterback ever, look bad in a divisional run and really manhandled him. So that's the difference between, you know, the way Jerry Jones had to go about getting that ransom's worth of assets versus how Danny Ainge had to go about getting him, which was, you know, gift wrapped through the stupidity of an owner with no basketball knowledge whatsoever. Owner that they had no clue what he
At
was
the end of
doing.
the day, though, like circumstances dictate results, and
Okay,
like
yeah, exactly. So
like I mean,
let's give
we
Danny
made
Ainge credit.
quite a few conference finals in Danny Ainge's day. Like I don't know the percentages of years, but it's probably a lot more than most
Yeah.
teams.
So again, but sometimes you're better off lucky than good. So you know, Danny
Yeah.
Ainge, you know, we can't really give him. We can't say he's a splendid negotiator for these things because there were asterisks next to it. But again, he made it, it happen, so it happened. But again, obviously, we already know what he did with those picks. Absolutely, he didn't do. He didn't even scratch the surface of the full potential that he could have reached with those picks and catapults in the Boston Celtics to a dynasty. It was a really it was basically after that trade was made, it was like a dynasty on the rise, was sitting on his lap, just first taking. It was very easy to do. I mean, it was really there were so many trades that could have been made. When you have 6 extra first round picks, these aren't your picks, bro. These are 6 extra first round picks. There isn't a single superstar who's on the trade block you can't acquire. Not a single superstar.
What do you mean you
And
got James Young with one of those?
yeah, oh yeah, James Young, Terry Rozier, yeah, bro. Like, yeah, I mean, he broke the bank with those, bro. I mean, like, you just didn't do it. You just didn't do anything with those picks, and it's really it's shameful, and it's torturing. As a Celtics fan, I look back, I hold my head. I don't. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter, he's got me on Twitter for almost a decade. He knows how I feel, how frustrated I am, and what made it even worse for me was how Celtics fans and even the mainstream media just kept saying, no, Danny's just waiting for the right move. Danny's a
We
strategic
trust.
guy. You know,
Yeah.
he's playing chess and you guys are playing checkers, bro. And then it was almost just like he was in Boston simultaneously during the Belichick era. So it's like that acumen was just being like it was in the water. Like it was anybody
I mean,
any sports
yeah.
guy was any sports guy GM there was whoever drank that water was getting Belichick's intellect. When there's really you can't compare what he did. Belichick he proved that he can get these castaway players, not overpay and not get late round draft picks and turn them into great system players and produce Super Bowls. Danny Ainge didn't do that. That ring we got in '08 was a product of a super team. So it just didn't make sense. And secondly, first of all, like, and then the thing that hurt the most is people kept calling it a genius. Like we have a lot of mutual friends who kept calling it genius. You know, Danny's waiting, he's waiting for the right move. We're not gonna try to build a team overnight and stuff. But and then the weird part, that really makes me geek out and like makes me really laugh OD to myself. Like I crack up when I think about this. Like at that same time, everybody was calling Jerry Jones a god awful general manager. Like I was saying, yo, Jerry, since 1999, the Dallas Cowboys, or since some point after they won their fifth Super Bowl in 1995, the Dallas Cowboys have a 500 record. And even to this day, it's going to be somewhere around 500. It's a mediocre record. So they were calling him a bad general manager, and he's the guy that's getting in the way of the Dallas Cowboys going back to being, America's team, really exhibiting that they're America's team. Meanwhile, Danny Ainge is being called a genius. But like, yo, that guy mentioned before, Jerry Jones, the biggest pillaging of assets in sports history was the Herschel Walker trade. They didn't get as many first round picks as the Celtics got, but getting first round picks in
Yeah,
football.
yeah, but you're praising Jerry Jones for one trade, and he hasn't made a conference finals or won a conference finals in 21 years or whatever it is now.
Bro, he built a dynasty.
Even more. What is it?
Built,
25,
yeah,
26
but Jerry
No,
Jones
but
built a dynasty.
Danny Ainge over counting trades. Like, you're talking about circumstances. There's 4 that were really good, right? I mean, we got KG, we got Ray Allen, the Nets trade, and the Kyrie trade. At the end of the day,
He lost to Kyrie. That was I'm gonna
wow,
get
Isaiah Thomas hasn't played a fucking basketball game in like 2 years. How do we lose that trade?
So another thing too with trading for Kyrie, Danny Ainge thought he could mold and make Kyrie into the Batman on a championship level team, which is completely asinine. It makes no sense. And people can say, oh, years later we found out he has character issues, but the writing was already on the wall about that, even the moment he was on the trade block with the Cavaliers. I mean, what winning player does not want to play alongside the second greatest hooper in NBA history? Like, why would you not want to play alongside him so you can, instead of having 1 ring, have 3 rings or 4 rings and be in the discussion as a guy that was the second best player, an all NBA level player on a dynasty? That in itself is a red flag. And I don't know why you would do that. Why he wanted out. I mean, again, it was apparent he didn't. He wanted to be the best. He wanted to be the best player on a championship. He wanted.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. But Kobe Bryant wanted to be the best player on a championship team too.
But he had already won. But there's different. He already
wasn't
won.
the best player on it though. It took Shaq to leave for him to be the best player. Kyrie Irving, in his weird, unconventional mind, might have been thinking like, I could be Kobe somewhere. He was wrong. He can't. He's always going to be a Robin to a Batman. But like, that's a great point though. That is a great point.
Yeah.
He should have won to stay with
Kobe and Shaq had already three-peated. So he already established himself as a dynasty player. Whereas, Kyrie had 1 ring, and really every player, every kid dreams of being on a dynasty, being a all NBA player on a dynasty. Another thing too, like Danny Ainge, I don't know why he thought that Kyrie could be the best player on a championship team. He could be a real Batman. Because it's not like he came into the league with LeBron. He was alone for the majority. He was alone for years and years. He was drafted in 2011. 2011, he was drafted. And not once did he ever sniff the playoffs, which is all right, cool. They weren't very good teams. They didn't sniff the playoffs.
LeBron James didn't make it the playoffs his first couple years in the NBA either, though.
He didn't come anywhere close to a 500 record though. Kyrie, LeBron came close to some 500 records. Kyrie didn't even come close to a 500 record, bro. And we already seen what LeBron did with LeBron had supporting cast basically the same level as what Kyrie was having in Cleveland before LeBron went back there. And LeBron got them to the playoffs. Kyrie didn't do that. So like I don't know.
I mean, Kyrie Irving's not LeBron James, but at the end of the day,
and you would think Danny Ainge would recognize that and think twice before saying putting this guy in the pedestal.
He didn't need him to be LeBron though. He just needed him. He just needed him to be like what he was, and I mean, we just didn't have enough other players than Tatum and Brown. And
I just think it's ironic how Ainge jumped the gun on Kyrie after just really one really good NBA Finals where he seemed like a Hall of Fame level talent. But he didn't jump the gun on all these other guys we mentioned who have seasons worth of Hall of Fame production. It just doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't. Danny Ainge's rationale just does not make sense at all from 2013 onwards. Like nothing he does makes sense except for drafting Jason Tatum and drafting Jaylen Brown. I mean, that makes sense, but I still feel like maybe he probably would have been smart, maybe trading one of the two these past couple of years, because it's not like we've had a sample size of them together, and it's just not working. It just didn't work.
It's probably not championship level.
It's not, and it would be one thing if like we didn't have a big sample size. We have deep playoff runs with these guys. Like these guys are already
at least 3 to 4 seasons worth.
Yeah, these guys are already in the biggest moments they'll ever be in their career. Big minutes, and we already know what's happening. They're too similar. They're not, the ball just isn't fluent with them. It just doesn't seem seamless. It doesn't seem like natural basketball offensively. It seems kind of forced. Like Charles Barkley brought up a great point. It seems like they take turns night in, night out. And great teams, championship teams don't take turns. They really play to each other's strengths and they make each other better. So that's another thing. I don't understand why he didn't make moves like that. And then I think he just had to do something out the blue. That was a ballsy move, a gutsy move. That's what you need to do as a GM to build a championship team. It's all about making gutsy moves. You're not going to win a title without making a gutsy move and doing something that is high risk, high reward. He didn't do it. He was too complacent. He stuck to his guns too much, and he had no plan. He was a man with no plan. But I will say that trading for Isaiah Thomas was a very smart move that really brought life back into
It was
our
a really good trade. It
great
definitely rejuvenated the franchise for sure.
rejuvenate franchise. But yeah,
If we're talking free agents, he's been like we talked about Shaq, we talked about Jermaine O'Neal. We haven't even touched the worst contract in NBA history, Gordon Hayward, or the second worst one in Kemba Walker.
yeah,
Both those contracts are garbage, but they even out. Like at the end of the day,
but I'm actually like you kind of like I'm not talking. I'm just talking about the irony between like saying Danny Ainge is a genius GM and Jerry Jones is bottom tier.
That's
like
too far.
that
I agree
tell
with
it
that.
two cities thing that was that sentiment that was arisen. Is that a word, arisen?
Arose.
Arose, yeah, arose. But like, yeah, so like he flipped away. He got the biggest pillaging of assets in history in the Herschel Walker trade. He flipped it into a dynasty, and that was the most stacked. I don't care what football team you bring up. The '90s Cowboys, that's the most stacked dynasty in NFL history, just from top to bottom, defense, offense, special teams, completely most stacked ever. No one's gonna like. It's just the best dynasty ever, bro. Like the most built, most formidable dynasty ever. But
Patriots had 2 dynasties. I don't know.
yeah, but the Patriots dynasty,
Different conversation, I guess.
they weren't stacked. Like I said, it was like like really good players in Belichick's system doing well. But that team, they was just stacked, bro. If you look at the team. Anyways, so yeah, he flipped into a dynasty. And Danny Ainge, what did he do with that? That's the second biggest pillaging of assets in NFL history, in sports history.
Not even a single NBA Finals appearance, and we were never a legitimate contender.
And like the ironic part is if we judge like Danny Ainge's like a GM legacy after that Brooklyn trade, it's really comparable to Dan Snyder. Because when the only other pillaging of asset trade and sports history that compares to the Herschel Walker trade and the Brooklyn trade for the Celtics is that '99 trade between the Redskins and the Saints when Mike Ditka really really emptied the trade for Ricky Williams because he thought he was the second coming of Jim Brown. The Redskins got all these extra first round picks and all these assets. They built some decent teams. Like they just didn't have a quarterback. The Redskins had some great defenses in the 2000s, but they won a division title. They made the playoffs a couple times, but they were never the furthest they went was the divisional round. So they're never legit.
That RG3 trade though.
Yeah, but that's complete. That's a whole different era.
Yeah,
completely. It's like 15 years, 13 years later, or some shit like that. Yeah. But so yeah, like actually that's the comparison that should have been being made, like Dan Snyder and Danny Ainge, instead of saying Danny Ainge is a genius and Jerry Jones isn't a genius. But anyways, so yeah, you touched on a good point about the Kyrie trade. So let me tell you why I think we still lost that Kyrie trade. Yes, Isaiah Thomas did not play in a game ever again. Like he's barely.
Jay Crowder is trash.
Barely played in any games. He's like completely. He's not even a decent role player today. He won't even be. Not even a decent role player. But when you're a GM, you really have to look at your needs. Like you can't just make trades based upon this is the biggest thing. Let me splash that. And you really have to analyze your X's and O's. What's working for you? What's not working for you? And do your due diligence in building a team that works, a complete team that complements each other, because you can't go about it like a Yahoo Fantasy basketball roster. Like we've seen in the past, like sometimes you can build a star team, like a complete stacked team, but it's not going to work because the styles don't match up. The system you're trying to work just isn't working. It's not a winning formula. You have to really find your niche.
Kyrie's box office, though. Superstars attract superstars. If Kyrie Irving was on the Celtics today, we'd probably have KD. We'd probably have AD or James Harden or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Kyrie is box office. Like
that's a decent.
If you acquire Kyrie, you have a better chance of acquiring someone else. So I do like that trade.
That's a decent point. But Danny Ainge is acquiring, thinking he could be the Batman. Like Danny Ainge is really clear that this guy. He thought that Kyrie could be a Batman. But secondly, let me first so the Celtics when the Celtics made the Eastern Conference Finals.
If we didn't have Gordon Hayward, like we spent that money somewhere else.
That's a good point too. So we can
okay.
yeah. So yeah. So when the Celtics made the Eastern Conference Finals, they were a number one seed with Isaiah Thomas. They had some deep playoff runs. They made the Eastern Conference Finals twice with Isaiah Thomas, I believe. Yeah, twice.
Lost by record margin both times.
Yeah. Or maybe did they lose? Did they make it? I think they made it once with Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, once they lost four
Once
one.
yeah, and then it was the Raptors. The Raptors at the time. Yeah. So yeah, if you look at why we lost to the Cavaliers, really, what was our biggest weakness in those postseasons? Really, there were two big holes with the Celtics. First, we needed a facilitator, a guy that could run an offense and distribute the basketball at high level, something the Celtics have not had since Rajon Rondo. All right, Isaiah Thomas, he was a prolific scorer, 29 points per game. He was a decent passer, 6 assists per game. But 6 assists per game, it's not elite. It's not all any. That's not
the primary ball handler.
Yeah, it's not very good. It's not very good. And you could say like, yo, Steph Curry gets you 6 assists per game. But that's a completely different offense
system.
Completely different scenario. Okay. Second biggest need was we had no rim protector. Al Horford. It was in hindsight, I don't mind that. I don't mind that addition at all. He was a solid player, but he wasn't a good rim protector. So those are our two biggest needs. We need a facilitator and a rim protector. So what does Kyrie Irving really bring to the table? Does Kyrie Irving solve any of those issues? As far as facilitating, he's actually an even where like he's an average to below average, more like a below average passing point guard. He gets you around like 5.5 assists per game. Yeah, he's
probably about an average passer, I'd say.
Yeah, average at best, but more like a slightly below average. And court vision, that's not his thing. He's a shoot first point guard, which again, that's not a bad thing. You could be a shoot first point guard and still have insane vision. Like James Harden is basically a point guard. He's got that. Westbrook, Dame Doll is he's a pretty good passer too. But Kyrie Irving, the thing is his style is, I'm just gonna try to he's very when he has a tendency to over dribble, and when he's in his bag trying to break somebody's ankles, it's hard. His mind isn't thinking to pass the ball or even look to find the open man. He's really tunnel vision trying to get that easy layup. He's just not a good passer. Even in the Cavaliers days, LeBron was the primary distributor on those teams. That's just not his thing. That's not his game style, and that's no knock to him. Everybody has their own styles, but that didn't bring that. Getting Kyrie Irving as opposed to Isaiah Thomas wasn't helping with that cause at all. Wasn't
still upgrading at the combo guard position, I guess we would call them. They're not pure point guards, but they're like these combo guards. You're still upgrading your combo guard position. Ideally, would you have wanted Chris Paul to be with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Marcus Smart? Yes.
Of course.
But Chris Paul wasn't on the fucking trade block at the time.
Bro, he was. Actually, he was on the trade block literally every year, basically, since.
There is no way you're trading Isaiah Thomas for Chris Paul. The only reason why we got that deal done was because Kyrie was mad at LeBron and like the whole ownership.
Wait. I mean, what year did Chris Paul go to? Chris Paul got traded to the Rockets in 2017, I believe, or 2018. We have to look this up
because he's 17. Because they went to the conference finals.
2018. Yeah. So he was on the trade block as well. So that would have been a smarter move. That would have been a smarter move.
Scenario though, like, and Boston's thinking Cleveland's the number one contender. If we could fleece their second best player and give them someone who can't even pass a physical, like I don't think that trade was that bad. I think
the only reason why the only thing we've squandered a first round pick for that. In hindsight, Kyrie didn't work out. And that, losing a first round pick is a big deal, especially
that kind of hurt.
Especially when your team like the Celtics, you're just trying to put the pieces together. You're just trying to build something. We've been in straight building mode since 2013, and that first round pick. I mean, not to say that like we had so many other first round picks as well, like over the years, but losing a first round pick for that's the reason why I say looking back, I don't think that was like we would have been better off trading for someone else because there are other players as well that we could trade it for. Let me list all the players that Danny Ainge balked on because he thought that he could land a free agent, a big name free agent in Boston, or he just like the whole trust the process when really Danny Ainge trusting the process really being Danny Ainge he was really smart, man. He was like they can't say I'm making the wrong move if I never make a
I
move.
keep putting it off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I don't make a move, you can't say I'm making the wrong move.
True.
Actually, I can just say that I'm thinking, like I'm playing chess and you're playing checkers. When in reality, he was just sitting on his ass waiting for a prayer to come from heaven as above for an 18 trophy would just magically appear in Boston, bro.
I mean, yeah, in hindsight, it would have been nice to make that extra move to make us a legit title
Yeah,
contender.
because in all
We're
honesty,
still living in the Eastern Conference Finals, though. What, 4 of the last 6 years or whatever it
but
is?
again, that just shows you how weak the Eastern Conference was as well.
I agree with that. I
Yeah, it was
completely
so.
agree that the Eastern
And
Conference
the
is.
thing is, if we were making the Eastern Conference Finals and we were like, "Yo, we have a really good chance of making the finals," it was like like when the Warriors were playing the Rockets with Harden, CP3, people were like, "Yo, it could go either way. This is like a heavyweight contender. This is like a heavyweight matchup." Or like the Celtics bumping into the Pistons like in the 2000s in the conference finals. Like these really two even heavyweight teams going at each other. Then I'd say like it was it was a good run. We
Always
really
mismatch.
yeah, it was always mismatched, bro. Like no one ever thought we were ever gonna bring like the title was ever gonna come. So let's look at the players that we could have gotten. Like these are just a list of super. I'm just throwing
We did have
superstars.
a better roster than the Heat, though. We probably a good chance we probably should have won that one. If we lost that one because of coaching, to be honest, Spoelstra's a way better coach than Brad Stevens at the
Yeah,
end of the
I
day.
agree with that. I agree with that. I think Stevens is a great coach, but I think Spoelstra is the most underrated coach in
He's
NBA.
an elite coach.
He's an
Like,
elite coach. He
yeah,
by every stretch of the definition, he's elite.
yeah,
Since the past over 10 years now, they're the two best coaches have been Greg Popovich and Eric Spoelstra.
I
Hands
agree. Yeah,
yeah. Which is another interesting too. Like I think another reason why Danny Ainge got overrated a lot is because Boston sports city. I think really the Patriots aura really rubbed off on like how we judge the Celtics. Because
yeah,
in like 2010, 2011, everybody kept saying Doc Rivers is the best coach in basketball, which was really weird. Like ESPN kept saying it, like
yeah.
Boston Globe. That was the sentiment at the time. That was like the galvanized thought, which made no sense because Greg
He's
Popovich.
always been overrated.
Yeah,
He's always, yeah.
yeah, like Popovich has always been the best coach since '99, like, hands down. Even like a couple years ago, I remember people saying, "Yo, is Brad Stevens? He's the next Popovich." And I even had some of my people I know were saying, "No, I'm taking Stevens over Popovich," which is we're not gonna entertain that. But let me list all the superstars that we could have acquired. And these are like let's not even think about fits right now because all of these guys, if we built like again, we had 6 extra first round picks and so many extra second rounders. We could have got both the two of these guys. There's so many moves that could be made. Let's not think that was just one move we could have made. We could have made a plethora of moves like we built the
It was
08
six
team.
first in 8 seconds or something within like that time period.
Yeah, exactly. And
Ridiculous. Yeah.
and you would think Ainge himself would have known that because the way we built our 08 team, it wasn't just one move. We got Ray Allen first, and we got KG, and that was with regular amount of assets. We used our natural draft picks that we had as a franchise. We didn't have other draft picks really from other teams. So let me just list these names, yo. James Harden, and no, I'm not talking about James Harden this past year. In summer 2016, when me and my boy graduated from high school, there was like James Harden was on the trade block, and Daryl Morey. You know how Daryl Morey is. He was
Yeah.
always making moves. We could have acquired James Harden. Like there was serious thoughts, and the Celtics, like Daryl Morey was really looking at the Celtics because he thought, yo, we could get like 3, 4 first round picks for this. James Harden, that deal could have been made. Danny just sat on his ass. He didn't want it to happen. We had Jaylen Brown. So we could have traded Jaylen Brown and maybe some of I don't even know. We might not even have had to dealt Jaylen Brown, bro. That's that at the end of the day, we might not with those 6 first round
At
picks.
the time, I don't think Harden had the same trade value that he would have had
Yeah,
last year.
he was extremely underrated at that time.
Yeah.
He was extremely underrated. People overlooked him, even though he was without doubt a top 3 player in the NBA. He was just extremely undervalued. So
I could have done it with a couple first and like a
yeah,
Marcus.
there was still a debate of There was still debates about Russell Westbrook being better. People thought he was better, which is asinine. But again, he brings up a good point. So we could have gotten Harden then, most likely. Russell Westbrook, another guy that was on the trade block quite a few times. I'm not a big Russell Westbrook fan, but that's another big name, and that would attract
He might have fit well with the Celtics. Who knows?
Yeah,
Like,
that great point my boy Kearney made earlier. It attracts free agents having a Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, Boston's not a very desirable city for a big name athlete, you know, with that a big baller lifestyle to be in. It's just not. When Kyrie Irving said he didn't like living in Boston, he was speaking for how really every superstar would feel. So
He's
really, the only
outspoken,
yeah,
like, yeah.
yeah. I mean, all these superstars are going to LA. They're going to all these different. They're going to LA, Miami, even like H Town.
Promote your brand.
H
Yeah.
Town's got an amazing nightlife and it's tax free. So yeah, that was like Kyrie was just being honest, and Danny Ainge. That's another reason why Danny Ainge is a dumbass because you got all these 6 first round picks, and you know that Boston's not don't got that glamorous lifestyle, bruh. So the
It
only
could
way
be
you can,
though if they marketed it differently. Like it's a big
maybe,
market.
maybe,
Like
but
they market it as old school basketball when it could have been marketed as like come to a big market city.
nah. But the thing is, bro, Boston just doesn't have that nightlife. Like
Yeah,
things shut
true,
down at
true,
9
true.
p.m. Things shut down at 9 p.m. It's just not. It will never be like you know a nightlife city. Like it's never gonna compare it to those other cities. It's always gonna be viewed as an intellectual place where you know,
Whatever.
educational and like advanced in that sense.
Yeah,
And so that's another thing. You had 6 first round picks. So you already know, like a smart man would know, the only way I can build a championship team is through trades. You already knew it. You already, from firsthand experience, that's how you built our team through trades in '08. So you didn't even try to make a trade, bro. You thought you were going to get KD in free agency. You thought you were going to get these guys when there was a very low chance it was getting KD. Because again, yo, like it's like city. Like this is basketball is the number one sport where these superstars want to have a glamorous lifestyle. They want to be the hip hop league. Like on First Take, like Colin Coward, not First Take, but some show, ESPN show. Colin Coward was talking about, oh, like these hoopers, they might not need to be in a big nightlife city where they can turn up like Magic City. Aaron Rodgers lives in a suburb of Green Bay where you wouldn't even want to
way
get
different.
way different. Because and one of the I forget the guy's name. They said you're comparing rock and roll to hip hop.
Yeah.
Like NFL is a rock and roll league, basketball is a hip hop league, bro. Like you can't compare the two, bro. So yeah, Russell Westbrook again, CP3, multiple chances to get CP3. CP3 is getting dealt every summer, yo. You snap your fingers, CP3 is gone another team. So he went from the Clippers to the Rockets to the Thunder, and now he's on the Suns. So really, every summer CP3 has been being dealt, and that's really dumb. That's really not smart at all. Because like we already learned from before, like IT wasn't a great passer. He didn't have a high ball IQ. Kyrie, not a high ball IQ point guard. He can't run an offense to perfection. He's like score first. Kemba's the same exact way as those other three, if not worse. He's actually
Even
a worse,
worse. He's
worse,
even worse.
worse,
Yeah.
even worse. And CP3, the third greatest point guard in basketball history. And if you're not going to agree with me, he's top 5. And if you don't listen top 5, you're bugging. He's really after LeBron James of this generation, he's by far the best player at making his teammates around him better.
Yeah, but that's interesting though because I'd have to really go back and look at the years that he moved. I don't know at the time what assets we would have had versus giving up. So I'm gonna hold off on that one. It would have ideally Chris Paul would have fit very well with our team, but I remember DeMarcus Cousins, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, James Harden, those guys being lined up with Celtics trade this for that.
Yup.
I don't really remember like a split with Chris Paul ever, but I'd have to look that up.
Yeah, so like another thing, so after he got dealt from the Clippers, he did really good in Houston. So I can understand Ainge maybe balking at the idea when he's getting traded from the Clippers. Maybe he's not going to translate well to another
Yeah.
team or something like that. But once he balled out and made the Rockets were up 3-2 against the Golden
They
State
probably
Warriors
could
with
have beat
Kevin
Golden
Durant.
State with
If he didn't
everybody.
get if he didn't get hurt, they would have made the NBA Finals and won a ring. So after you saw that, any smart GM would have been like, yo, this guy is just like wherever you throw him, he's a systemless player. Wherever you throw him, he's gonna make your team a contender or a legitimate contender and make everyone better. And we've seen all the Celtic struggles, yo. Like we have Tatum, we have Brown. We don't have a guy that can run our offense to perfection. It seems like we're freestyling too much on offense. They're taking turns. We're not playing as a team. And you could say we're making those extra passes. The Celtics make a lot of extra passes, but it wasn't because of unselfishness. It was because of indecisiveness, masked in the guise of unselfishness, because we don't have a guy that's comfortable and confident enough to make the decisive play, the decisive pass to, on every play. We just didn't have that floor general. We didn't have the hallmark floor general that can run our offense to perfection. So we were making all those extra passes because everyone's just like,
I don't know if you need one in today's NBA though. Like I'm not really sure. Like this season, a lot of teams don't really have that are still in the playoffs right now. Like if we're just talking about this season,
I
like
mean, like who would you think? I mean,
I mean, you're talking about
the
Kyrie not
Nets,
being the floor general.
The
And
Nets
they're
have an
probably
elite,
gonna win the finals.
the Nets have an elite floor general.
Who?
Harden.
Harden's not an elite floor
Yeah,
general.
he is,
He
bro. He
needed
gets
Chris
you
Paul to
10, he
make
gets you
those
10,
conference.
he gets you
He
10, 11
needed
assists
Chris
per
Paul
game.
to make those conference finals. What did he do with Russell Westbrook? They were out in the second round in 5 games.
I mean, but he's
And
still
before Chris Paul, him and Dwight Howard weren't really doing anything. Were
they
they
made a
out?
conference. They made a conference finals. And James Harden. Let's not forget James Harden. James Harden. Huh?
The Bucks don't have an elite floor general. You know, Drew
Yeah,
Holiday.
and that's why they're never really
The
making.
Heat
They're
don't
never
have an
making the
elite floor
finals.
general. They made the finals last year. The only team with elite floor generals in the playoffs currently, because the Lakers just got knocked out, are the Suns.
I
Who
mean,
else has one? I guess
I say the
you could say
Nets.
Jokic, honestly, like in a way, is an elite floor
I
general.
say the Nets. I'm gonna stand by James Harden. He gets you. If you get, bro, how are you not an elite floor general if you're getting 10, 11 assists per game? Just
Russell Westbrook gets
common
10,
sense.
11 assists per game. Is he an elite
No,
floor?
but the difference in Russell Westbrook is because he's racking up those assists in the first half, and then in crunch time, he's not passing. Like if you look at his assists, he gets like 70, 80% of them in the first half, and it's not really like they're not dime. They're not really like.
I don't know how exact that is, but I don't know. I think that's tough to say. I don't
And
know.
James Harden's elite at passing out of double teams. Like if you like split second, he gets you the backdoor passes, no look. Like really, when the defense collapses on her, he's really moving, slithering around and
James
getting
Harden
into the
didn't
open
have Chris
man.
Paul
Huh?
in that game set. He didn't have Chris Paul in that game 7 against the Warriors. And
I mean, that's
the
really just
Rockets the
and that's just
Rockets missed 32 threes and he shot like 2 of 17 or whatever the hell it was.
yeah.
If
I
he
mean,
was
and
an
you
elite
the
floor
reason
general,
he didn't the Chris Paul like he just Chris Paul was his running mate. I'm
but
not
if you're an elite floor general and you're not hitting shots, your team should still score because you should be finding people in open positions. That didn't happen. They scored 80 like whatever points and they lost by
PJ
9.
Tucker, but who's he gonna be passing? PJ Tucker and Clint Capella. That's like 10.
Okay, but at the end of the day, like you could say the same thing about Russell Westbrook, and he still eats his 11 assists. Who was he passing to on the Thunder that one year where he went for like 30 and 11?
When he won the MVP.
Yeah, he wasn't
Oladipo.
passing anybody.
Oladipo. He had some.
Oscar Robertson, Oladipo shot 36% in the playoffs that year.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the regular season, bro. Like the regular, and then he got dipped in the first round. He got bounced in like 4 games or 5 games to the Rockets
That's
that
what I'm
year.
saying. Yeah.
No, but just the way if you watch the film for Harden and Westbrook, it's just like this. You could see that the level, the court vision with Harden is just on a whole other level than Westbrook's.
I agree, but I wouldn't consider Harden elite, but that's fine.
Yeah,
Keep
I consider him elite,
yeah.
so like that's a matter of debate.
It's a
But
whole
anyway,
that's a whole different segment we could
yeah,
probably do.
but yeah, so like a floor general, even in today's NBA, I stand by the fact that in an ideal world, you need an elite floor general because I see all these teams not doing well. You know, like the Bucks, they're not reaching their full potential. Even the Jazz, they've had spectacular defensive teams, but the reason why they haven't been mainstays in the conference finals or like made a conference finals is because of the fact that Donovan Mitchell gets you.
Too soon. Don't speak too soon.
Yeah, but the Donovan Mitchell was getting you 4 assists per game in the playoffs. That's the reason why they weren't making the conference finals. And like even the Cavs, like how was LeBron able to make those conference finals every year? Because he's an elite floor general. Or make the NBA finals every year because he's an elite floor general. Even in the Warriors, like you had Steph Curry gets you 6 to 7 assists per game, but then you had Draymond as well, another guy who was getting you 6, 7 a game. So you basically had
The
uh,
Warriors
uh
play good team basketball. I
yeah,
wouldn't consider any of them like they're a
yeah.
different story than
Yeah, but they still had the passing that you need. You had the passing that you need with
which is
that.
what I'm saying. The Celtics could go that route hypothetically. You don't need
Yeah.
Chris Paul, but Kyrie also isn't the person to do that.
Celtics tried that though, because Al Horford was a good passer. Let's not forget Al Horford was a very good passer for a big man. They tried, it just wasn't working because they weren't Stephen Curry and Draymond Green. Those are two. Were much better passers than IT and Al Horford were.
We don't really know if that wasn't working. We had Kyrie, Tatum,
Tatum, Brown.
and Brown together for one playoff run, and we shot 36%. So we were just off shooting, and I don't know. I think it's tough to say whether or not it would have worked out instead of acquired Gordon Hayward, could have got any other small forward on the market.
That's another knock on Danny Ainge for thinking
That was a bad contract.
Yeah, and let's address let's address that. Why on heaven's earth, if you have just an ounce of a basketball brain, why would you put 3 swingmen in one starting lineup?
Yeah.
In what world, in what galaxy do you think you can build a legitimate contending team that works properly with
He
3
needed a rim
swingmen?
protector on that team, and he got a shooting guard small forward.
Yeah, so we had Jaylen Brown, we had Tatum, then we had Gordon Hayward. Those guys are old. They're old, like swingmen, like 2 guards, 3 guards. You know, they're like they can't, and neither of them can run the point forward. If one of them could run the point forward like a LeBron James does, or like a like T Mac was a 2 guard, but he played the small forward at one point, so he could distribute as well. If he could run the point forward, like if there was or if he could run the point forward, if any of those guys could do that, then it would make sense. But none of them could run an offense, and none of them were elite off-ball players either. Like none of them were really great screen setters. Like they weren't guys that are gonna, getting you those like the little things that you need to win games.
Gordon Hayward's not Draymond Green.
Exactly. Jaylen Brown's the best off-ball player of the 3, but he's no Klay Thompson. He's no Draymond. He's no, Steven Adams when it comes to off-ball player, like Tony Allen, stuff like he wasn't like that. So, Danny Ainge is really like, I just didn't seem like he wasn't qualified to be the general manager, really. Like, he just didn't have the simple basketball, acumen that me and you have, like someone like us have, like that we're not even employed by a pro sports franchise. And just by watching games, it's just really easy what was working, what wasn't working. It wasn't. The writing was on the wall. What's working, what's not working with the Celtics. It became clear as day once the postseason.
We haven't had a rim protector since like 2011.
Yeah, and there was no floor general. And like Kearney can say, maybe you don't need in today's NBA, but it sure damn well helps if you have one. OD.
Oh yeah, it definitely does.
It helps you. It helps you. Words can't define how much having a floor general helps you. It's a big strength. And
every team Rondo and LeBron are on is like
that's why playoff Rondo is a big deal. So really, what does this resemble? Like when the Philadelphia 76ers drafted Nerlens Noel, Jahlil Okafor, and Joel Embiid 3 drafts in a row. Everyone's saying, why the hell are you drafting 3 centers, bro? Like, what are you gonna do with what in God's grace you can do with 3 centers? It's the same thing with Danny Ainge. What are you gonna do with 3 swingmen? Like that's why I kept saying by last season, I kept saying Yahoo Fantasy basketball roster. Like if this team looks great on paper, you see all these guys, like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, and even Kyrie was on the team when we had Hayward too for 1 year. So even Kyrie,
that was our one playoff run.
Yeah, but even without, subtract Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker again, like that's a decent player. Like he's a B-rated All-Star. So again,
Kemba was a bad.
It was a bad move. And then you see Terry Rozier, all these guys, Marcus Smart. It looked good on paper. It was a lot of moving parts, but the problem is moving parts only work if they can mesh, and they didn't mesh. So
Kemba's even worse at spreading the ball than Kyrie was, and he's older with more knee issues.
Yup, and he has even lower ball IQ than Kyrie.
Even worse at defense. Like it was like a downgrade at everything.
And no big time playoff experience. At least Kyrie's been in those big moments. So really, like Danny Ainge, really, like if you from this conversation, you can see how much Teflon the man's got. Like there's so many screw up things he did that no one was even pointing out or like pointing out as elephants in the room. Really, up until this season, even last year, everyone was saying, "Oh, brighter days ahead." We got a young core and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but like even then, like that's a whole other topic for another day because I don't think they can be. I don't think they're the right 1-2 punch for a championship team. But we're not going to get into that because that's going to be.
When is the last time a team won a championship without a superstar?
Exactly. That's another perfect thing too. Like we're in an age where it's all super teams. You have to be a super team to win.
You gotta have a top 5 player in the NBA.
You gotta have a top 5.
The last team to do it without a top 5 player in the NBA was the Spurs, and you could debate Kawhi at the time was approaching it. They also had a better role players around them and a better coach.
And they had Greg Popovich. Exactly. They had Greg Popovich.
Different scenario for sure.
Yeah. So And then there's another time about 10 years ago, the Minnesota Timberwolves drafted like 3 point guards. I mean, they drafted Johnny Flynn, Ricky Rubio, and there's a third name I'm forgetting. But that wasn't like people kept knocking them. Like, what kind of ineptitude is in this front office? What kind of bozos are calling the shots? Yeah, we weren't hearing that about Danny Ainge, which is
Got
really,
praised for the Gordon Hayward signing.
yeah, he got praised. Everyone's saying, "Oh my God, we got Gordon Hayward." Everyone's saying, "Yo, home run, home run." But that's just really like we're pointing out a lot of things about Danny Ainge that really there were just no like really blatantly stupid moves that weren't getting called out. And up until this year, people still had faith and he was still recognized as a great GM, elite GM. Because even if people say no one was calling the best GM in basketball, I heard a lot of people saying that. But even if you don't want to say that, he was always recognized as Danny the Genius, elite GM. He was viewed as elite GM basically the entire time from 2007 to this year.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep. And then let's look at the other people he could trade it for. We got CP3, we got Kawhi that 1 year. Now people can say that was a 1 year rental, but hey, if we won that, we would have won a chip with Kawhi that year if we got him. And a big reason why Kawhi didn't stay in Toronto, like if you can point out the LA, LA, he wanted to be in LA, but another reason was taxation, bro. Taxation. You look at when you play for the Toronto Raptors, you have to pay Canadian federal taxes. And if anyone who's been to Canada or who has a family in Canada, it's literally like 20% higher, like 15%. It's something crazy like that on top of the provincial taxes and the city taxes of Toronto. So McDonald's in Toronto, that's like $30, bro. You're dropping 30 bills at McDonald's there.
Also, I don't care what we gave away. If we got Kawhi Leonard for 1 year, I'll fucking
In a ring.
take it.
Yeah, no one's complaining about a ring. You know how hard it is to win a ring. And furthermore, like when Chris Bosh left Toronto, he even mentioned that too, bro. The taxation killed me. It's like it was a lot of money I was leaving on the table. Whereas when I went to Florida, no income tax, bro. I was living like a king. Not that he wasn't living like a king, but you know what he means relatively.
Yeah.
So then Kawhi, Anthony Davis. Let's not forget AD. When AD was with the Pelicans, they were
multiple
years.
He
was on the trade block. Yeah. AD wanted out, and the Pelicans knew. Pelicans knew that's one of those franchises. We're not going to land a big name free agent.
Yeah.
So we could have got him.
They have to draft.
Yep. Yeah. And we brought a big Gordon Hayward, a terrible acquisition, bro. Just terrible. Gordon Hayward's not a good defender. Not really, he's not a superstar. He
was 27 years old.
Yeah.
Who made one playoff appearance on a mid-level team.
Yeah, and one All-Star appearance too, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, only one All-Star appearance.
Yeah. And that literally the offseason required him. That preceding season was the only time he played like an All-Star. So I do not know where the sensationalism
Brad
came
Stevens.
from. Yeah, Brad Stevens and Boston, they like
their white basketball players.
Yeah, white. Yeah, I didn't want to say I'm a person of color. I'm a brown boy.
I 100% think that was a racial thing.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. I think the Kyrie exit was also more of like a racial thing in a way as well.
Yeah, in a sense, definitely.
Yeah.
So there were undertones of that. And you brought it. So like the better player we should have acquired that would have solved our needs and actually would have elevated us to a point where we would have made it. We had a great chance to make NBA Finals. Like we would have given the Cavs a run for their money, and we would have given who are the teams that are in the conversation? Like when the
Toronto,
Raptors, Toronto Raptors, the one of that year, and then So it's really just like the Raptors and the Cavs, and and even the Heat last year, what have you. Jimmy Butler, Jimmy Buckets, bro. We could have traded for Jimmy Buckets how many times?
Everybody
so many different years.
That's so annoying to me.
Yeah, and he can run the point forward too. Jimmy Buckets gets you like 6-7. He gets you 6-7 assists per game.
He would mesh so well with the defensive mindset of like Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown. It would have been
perfect. Bro. Great off-ball player and a very good clutch player. I mean, in the regular season, he's an elite clutch player, and then in the playoffs with the Bulls, he wasn't that great. But again, he had a first track record in the clutch was eons better than Gordon Hayward.
The Sixers were one bullshit rim bounce shot away from probably winning the championship that year because of Jimmy Butler.
Yes,
and they haven't done too much since. So.
Exactly. Jimmy Butler, me and Kearney both think that the Miami Heat were overrated last year, but who was the best player on that team when they made the finals last year? Jimmy Butler. So
he was really like the only reason, him and Spoelstra, like.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Boogie Cousins, another one. Like when IT, bro, we forget how great IT was. IT was dropping 29 a game. He was Mr. Fourth
Yeah.
Quarter. That for 3 seasons, he was unguardable. He was really that low center of gravity. It was just so hard when you would get low. He
Same
could just
problem
get
as Kemba though. It's just like it's like you're playing 4-on-5 on defense.
Kemba will never touch how good IT was.
No, I know, but I'm saying defensively, like it's like the same issue. Like
Yeah,
it seems like
exactly.
always a mismatch.
Yeah, exactly. But the way his offensive input and clutch time scoring was so
Huge,
great that
huge.
it
Yeah.
made up for it. It made up for it. That's how we won we were a first seed, bro. We were a 1 seed. So Boogie Cousins, really like the big weakness with Isaiah Thomas come playoff time was when you would trap him, he couldn't get out of the like he would get double team, triple team, and he's small. The court vision wasn't there. He would like they would like basically tower over him. You couldn't see. So like that's how we didn't. That's how they would beat us. Just trap Isaiah Thomas, and who was the second best player to pass to on those teams? I don't know, like Evan Turner, Marcus Smart, Al Horford. None of them are even B rated offensive players. They're C rated offensive players.
Tatum was young, averaging like 15 or whatever. Like he
Yeah,
wasn't.
actually, Tatum was even. I don't even think Tatum was. No, Tatum. We drafted Tatum after we dealt Isaiah Thomas.
No, they were together for a season. I'm pretty sure.
So we traded for 2017. 2017 is when we traded Isaiah Thomas and Tatum was drafted in 2017. So no, but he had Jalen. He had Jalen though.
Jalen, yeah.
Yeah, he had Jalen again. But again, Jalen was like he was raw as hell at that time. He wasn't. Yeah. So, but if we
He's
got
still kind of unpolished in a way. Like
And if we got Boogie Cousins, that's 28 points per game. And Isaiah Thomas and IT Boogie Cousins pick and roll would have been lethal, deadly. And he was healthy those 2 years too. So it's not like you can say, oh, he ended up getting hurt. He was healthy those 2 years. And if you had IT and Boogie Cousins, bro, watch out for the Celtics versus those Cavaliers teams. Like we forced LeBron to go 7 games when Kyrie got hurt in the Eastern Conference Finals. And even with LeBron and Kyrie, like we've come to find out Kyrie's not a ideal running mate. He's a good running mate. He's not ideal. And IT Boogie Cousins, that would have caused a lot of problems. And the Celtics were just a deeper team than the Cavs too. Like the Celtics were an extremely deep team. Really a lot of moving parts that work. Okay, so Paul George. I'm not a big Paul George fan, but I mean that's another name. He would have been better than Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, he would have been better than Hayward, but I don't think he would have
Yeah,
propelled us to.
I don't either. But Blake Griffin. This is Blake Griffin in the Clippers days, bro. There were rumors they were gonna get blown up eventually.
Yeah.
So again, IT and Blake Griffin, again, great combo right there in the pick and roll. That would have been a formidable team. And again, like my boy Kearney mentioned before, when you have a name like Blake Griffin, you're gonna attract free agents and stuff like that. Carmelo Anthony, 20 like let's remember 2013 is when we made that trade.
Year, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. 2013 is when we got those Nets assets.
Yeah.
So and then Carmelo finished second in MVP voting. Well, he was the only
the playoffs.
Yeah, he was in the second round. Yeah, but like, huh?
He knocked us out the playoffs like that year. Right?
Yeah, he knocked us out the playoffs that year. And yeah, 2013, Carmelo Anthony was the only guy who received a first place and MVP vote after LeBron James. And then yeah, the Knicks missed the playoffs other years, but Melo was still getting you. He was still unguardable scorer, incredible rebound.
Out of town, so that would have been a pretty easy trade, to be honest.
Yeah, would have been a very easy trade. Isaiah Thomas with Melo, and Melo's out of all these guys, Melo's like the biggest box office name. Like
could have attracted Chris Paul if you have
would have attracted Chris Paul. Like a lot of people want to play with Melo, bro.
Yeah.
DeMar DeRozan, that's another swingman that would have made sense instead of Gordon Hayward. The reason
better
being,
defensive player.
Yeah, better defensive player, and the reason being because he's a completely different offensive scorer too. He's a mid-range guy.
Yeah.
And DeMar DeRozan, we already know he was the Raptors were making the conference finals every year, and that was I would a lot of people say DeRozan was the best player on that team, so he had it in him. Victor Oladipo, again, just a name out there.
I mean, could have got him for nothing.
It would have been better than Hayward.
Yeah.
And then there's Hassan Whiteside. I mean, a few years back, this would have made those. That would have looked real good. But now we see Hassan Whiteside kind of fell off. But maybe the system is. He's had a lot.
2 years ago, he still had a top 15 PR in the NBA.
Yeah, And
he was pretty good a couple years ago.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he even carried the Heat to the playoffs as their best player.
Yeah. He wasn't too bad like during that time frame,
Yeah,
like
and
20.
obviously what we said, we need a rim protector. So,
Yeah.
and one could say, Danny Ainge didn't make those moves, or he kept waiting because the Warriors with KD are too good. The Nets right now are too good, or even like those LeBron teams with Kyrie and Cleveland were better than the Celtics could have gotten, which again isn't true because we named all the big name superstars he could have gotten. But furthermore, you got to think about injuries. I mean, the Raptors made that deal for Kawhi Leonard in the deadline when everybody's thinking, nah, the Warriors with KD are too good, KD and Curry. What happens? KD gets injured. Even Clay gets hurt for a little bit during the series. And what happens? The Raptors get a championship out of it. Their first ring, their first title ever. We're seeing this year. Everybody's thinking, the Lakers gonna beat the Suns in the first round, no doubt. AD gets hurt, Suns win the series. Injuries are a part of the game, especially the big name players, the front level, the big name pieces, the big pieces to every team. They're getting the most minutes, the most fatigue. They get injured a lot. And on top of that, those draft picks from the Nets, the Sixers, and the Grizzlies, they had an expiration date. So we already knew by 2019, 2020, 2018, whatever year the last one of those picks was going to be made, that if you don't flip any of these assets, it's game over. It's too late to do anything with the assets. So the fact he didn't make any moves, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. It's illogical. It just seems like a 2-year-old was running the team, a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, just a little child. Because injuries are a part of the game. I just mentioned two big cases where they got hurt. Complete changes up the complete way the way league looks, the way the way the path to the championship looked, and then those picks had expiration dates. So you can't be complacent forever. That's why the assets got squandered. It's that simple. And then another one that I completely botched last summer that I freaking punched the wall about. I flip things. I get so angry last summer with Devin Booker. Bro, Devin Booker last summer, he was demanding a trade. He's like, I want out of Phoenix. Get me the hell out of here. And this Phoenix Suns were aggressively trying to find the right package to trade Devin Booker so that they can get the value for this budding superstar that really all signs show that he was going to be a superstar. The man
It
dropped
was also
70.
leverage in a way to make the Suns make a move for something. Like if Booker says like I want out of here because we stink, the Suns are like, all right, we either have to trade Booker or get a guy like Chris Paul. So like in
Yeah.
a way, like it's still
But
leverage.
Chris Paul was acquired about a month later, so that
Yeah.
was really after they really emptied the tray, really went on their P's and Q's to find a guy. It didn't work out, so then like, all right, we can't even find somebody that we want, so we might as well at least try to get somebody to like keep him happy. So the ideal trade would have been, which would have solved all our problems. So floor general was an issue. Like we've always needed a floor general, and furthermore, the thing with Tatum and Brown that we've seen the past few postseasons is that they're very similar players when it comes to scoring offensively. Their shot selection is identical. If you look at their shot selection from the paint, the mid range, and at the rim, their distributions within 5% of each other. And even in the playoffs against the Miami Heat, there were games where we saw them. They settled for too many jump shots, bro. Like the one game we actually spanked the Heat and we won decisively was one where they took it to the hole a lot, and they attacked the paint. But the Tatum and Brown, their offensive play styles are very similar. Once again, they can't be point forwards. They can't pass the ball at a high level where they can run an offense or be like the secondary guy running an offense.
They're ISO wing players.
Their shot charts are very similar. They settle for mid range a little bit too much sometimes. Settle for a lot of jump shots, and they don't drive as much as they should. And again, for a defense, the easiest thing in the world is when they know this team just scores one way. Like we can't keep them guessing. Predictability is the biggest weakness for any offense. And when you guys don't complement each other, and really we're seeing with Dame Doll and CJ, the reason why they're not taking their games to the next level is because they're too similar offensively. So
Yeah.
that was the big thing. So that's why we should trade it for Booker. What we could have done is we could have traded Jaylen Brown and Kemba Walker for Devin Booker and Ricky Rubio. Ricky Rubio is a guy that gets you 8 assists per game. He's an elite floor general.
You really want to get rid of Jaylen Brown though? Like
For Devin Booker, hell yeah.
Yeah,
Hell yeah.
I think you're bringing up all these names, and it would have been nice to make any of these deals for sure. But it's tough to say that because you don't even know. Maybe Danny Ainge was poking around in these. You really don't know, like, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. We could say, oh, well, in hindsight, we thought maybe Jaylen Brown would have
I mean, there's
developed more.
31 other teams that are probably like, damn, we should have made that trade too. So,
No,
like,
but
it's
the
kind
thing
of
is,
tough.
when you're an elite GM, you have to
That wasn't the
have,
question, though.
have
Is Danny Ainge an elite GM? It was he successful in Boston?
Yeah, he wasn't successful. That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
You
he
have
was
to. There were
successful.
all these moves that could have been made that were great moves that would have been, in hindsight, even at that time, there was every reason in the world to believe it would have been a good move. There, even at last summer, there was every reason in the world to believe Devin Booker was going to be a superstar, and he was better than Jaylen Brown. His numbers show it. The way he played in the bubble
For
showed
sure,
it. He was
for
better
sure,
than
for
Jaylen
sure.
Brown.
Yeah.
And as a GM, if you have to make some types of ballsy moves. You have to sometimes do something to catapult your team. You can't just sit around for 8 years like Danny Ainge did and just play it safe. You can't, especially when you have 6 extra first round picks. You have to do something. And Danny Ainge didn't do it. He thought he could be like Bill Belichick and just score on late first round picks or sign people or like make something out of nothing when everyone's saying you can't do it. And that's another thing I want to bring out. Danny Ainge was not a good drafter. He was subpar at drafting. All right. So in Danny Ainge's 18 years as GM of the Boston Celtics, a Danny Ainge draft pick has made the All-Star game only 3 times. Only 3 times. And from 2003 to 2019, not a single one of his draft picks made the All-Star made the All-Star game. So 0 All-Star appearances. All right. Now someone can bring up the Rondo trade on draft day. So I'm judging Danny Ainge as a guy that can scout, a guy who can find a diamond in the rough, a guy, when you're scouting, it's all about finding a diamond in the rough, right, Kearney? It's all about seeing what other people don't see, right? Like, am I correct?
Value, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Rondo, the way the context to why we drafted Rondo is not Danny didn't find a diamond in the rough for Rondo. This is why we got Rondo. All right, so yeah, the point guard was a dire need for the Boston Celtics. The free agency wasn't really working with the way the salaries added up. They couldn't find a guy in free agency, so they had to go to the draft to get a point guard. So this is the 21st overall pick. 21st overall pick. This is a very extremely weak point guard draft class. No point guards are drafted up until the 21st pick, and the Celtics had a dire need for point guard. And the only point guard on people's draft boards to really had a chance of being drafted in the first round was Rajon Rondo. So really, it wasn't a matter of Danny Ainge finding a diamond in the rough. He chose him basically like a starving man with only one entree to pick from on the menu.
In a way, though, there were question marks about Rondo because of his like aggressive nature and shit like that, like whether or not he could fit on a team. And obviously, those are still question marks today.
But you need a point guard. He had no choice but to make that move.
No, but he could have traded for one. Instead, he did take a chance on that 21st overall pick or whatever the hell it was. You know what I'm saying? So like that, it's still technically a good move. Like he still could have traded for someone.
Oh yeah, so I was saying he could have traded for someone. You're right. I mean, I think he explored all his options for trading.
He probably did for sure.
He did. I remember reading he explored all his options for trading. He just didn't. There was just no one to get with this. The salaries were very weird at that time, and there was the point guard. But it wasn't a great amount of point guard availability. So yeah,
I don't think we win that ring without Rondo.
We don't. So, and I'm judging Rondo. I'm judging. Yeah. And I'm judging. I'm not saying that was a great draft pick, but I'm just judging Danny Ainge as a guy, as a scout, a guy who can scout talent in the draft. So this wasn't really like a very classic example finding a diamond in the rough. This is really kind of a last resort thing. So if there were other instances of Danny Ainge finding good draft players, like having high success at getting.
I mean, we traded back to get Tatum, which was the right pick.
So Tatum. I mean, Tatum was
a really good trade.
Tatum was the right pick. I mean, I mean, yeah, Tatum and Brown, like even though they're both swingmen, I could say like they could still work in a starting lineup if you put the right team around them. So yeah, the Tatum was a great
We
pick.
just need a
Jalen,
facilitator, which
yeah,
we
exactly. Yeah, Jalen was a good pick. But yeah, but again, none of them ended up being superstars. They're still not superstars yet, and they're only so from 20. And if you've been a GM for 18 seasons and you only had drafted people to make an All-Star team 3 times, that's not really good. So that doesn't help Danny Ainge's cause as being labeled as an elite GM or his tenure as a GM. He wasn't very good. Another thing too, as a great GM, you're expected to draft some difference makers in the late rounds because it's not like all these guys in the late rounds are
good role
trash.
players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who do we stack up Danny Ainge against? So who was in the conversation? Like who did the general public put in the same echelon as Danny Ainge as a GM? First one was RC Bufford, who's the GM of the San Antonio Spurs. That's the guy in the conversation with them. He was in the neighborhood with him, Pat Riley, and Bob Myers, the Warriors GM. So those are the guys.
Pat Riley's elite. I don't even want to hear that talk. He's not in the same neighborhood as Pat Riley.
Who, Bob Myers?
No, I'm saying Danny Ainge is not in the
Yeah,
same.
but again, me and you were in a big minority, bro, when it comes to Danny Ainge. Most people were putting him in that category. There's no question about it. They were like, we're that's why we have
Well,
rationale.
the Warriors have clearly drafted better than the Celtics.
Yeah, exactly. So let's look at who has the late first round picks. Like what has RC Buffer been able to do with that? So like RC Buffer took Manu Ginobili 57th overall, took Tony Parker 28th overall, took Kawhi Leonard. Okay, so he traded for unheralded Kawhi Leonard, who's not touted on the draft boards. He wasn't viewed as a guy that was going to ever be a superstar. He was just viewed.
What was he, like 14 to 17?
15th overall, which is still late. That's still a late round, especially for basketball standards. This isn't the NFL. So he traded for Kawhi Leonard. He got him from the Indiana Pacers. So again, that was another spectacular genius move where like really uncanny. Like no one saw these guys being anything, and they just ended up being propelled them into multiple rings, 5 rings they turned into.
I don't know. We got James Young like 15th overall.
Yeah, and what did James Young do? Like exactly, bro. And then let's look at Bob Myers, the Warriors GM. So Klay Thompson, 11th overall. 11th overall. That's not high. That's pretty damn low for basketball standards. It's very like 11th overall. That's not usually you don't get difference makers.
It could be like a 9 or a 10 seed and get that pick.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing with being a great GM, you have to sometimes hit on these late first round picks because you're making the playoffs every year. That's the thing in basketball. You make the playoffs every year if you're pretty good because the majority of the teams make the playoffs. So you're not going to be getting these lottery picks. You got to make sure that you know how to scout. Danny wasn't very good at scouting. He was below average at scouting. He really was below average at scouting. He hit with Tatum and Brown picks, but again, that was their 2 seasons. Those are 2 drafts.
What overall was Smart?
He was like 9th or 10th. He was like 7th, 8th or 10th.
I was thinking
again, I was supportive of the Marcus Smart thing, and I still think it was the right move, even though Julius Randle kind of makes you raise your eyebrow. Was that the right move?
I know. That came out of nowhere too.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere. But again, Marcus Smart was part of our identity. He was our hustle player. He was our defensive guy. So
I like that pick at the end of the day.
Yeah, I still like that pick. I'm not gonna knock Danny Ainge for that, even though you can, but I'm not. I personally wouldn't.
You're brutal.
Yeah. Huh?
You're brutal.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. Actually, no. I'm being honest, bro. Like, I think that was the right move. I'm not knocking Danny Ainge. Marcus Smart was a good pick. I'm not gonna knock him. I don't think you should knock him.
Yeah. Then again, we only have we're naming Tatum, Brown, and Smart, and he's had 10 draft classes.
Yeah, and really, Marcus Smart has had more productive seasons than Julius Randle, to be honest. Like more really, really good seasons. And you can put up an argument that Marcus Smart was the best defending wing, arguably because he was conversation. Yeah. So 20 Parker. So Manu Ginobili was 57. Oh, we already mentioned that stuff, right? Okay. So Bob Myers, Klay Thompson was 11th overall. Draymond was 35th overall.
2nd round pick.
35th overall. And let's look at some other guys. Pascal Siakam, the second best player on that championship Raptors team. Raptors would not have won that chip without Pascal Siakam. Kawhi Leonard and Pascal Siakam actually broke the record for the most points per game scored as a duo in the postseason or in the finals, something like that. we're gonna once we'll revisit this and bring it up. But there was a record that
I think Lowry and Siakam are like 2A, 2B, but I could see Siakam ahead of Lowry for sure.
Yeah, no, Siakam was definitely the second best player
Yeah.
on that team, but Kyle Lowry was the heart and soul of that team. So yeah, Siakam was 27th overall. Jimmy Butler was 30th overall. They're just Clint Capella was, late. There's just so many guys that have been drafted in late rounds that
I don't know. I think looking at draft picks is tough. I'm all with you on the trades and the free agents, but I think looking at draft picks is a little tough. I think that's a little tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, and I think really the only thing for this is like kind of like the guys who are his contemporaries that he was being compared to, like that was viewed as his echelon, and they look what they did and what he did. So yeah, like those are some points right there. And then let's talk about him as like we could talk about the personnel, but there's another aspect of being a GM, and that's the organizational behavior, maintaining a good culture where the people get along and the players like playing there. I think the Celtics have had a winning culture. I think no doubt about it. Look at how much they've won. But you got to kind of look at the superstars that we have had, how some of them have felt when they left. Ray Allen left hating the franchise. Rondo left hating the franchise. And Kyrie Irving left hating the franchise. Now, was Danny Ainge responsible for those beefs? No, he wasn't. Actually, it was the big three, like Paul Pierce, KG, Rondo, Ray Allen, all had some like these beefs going on. But it is well documented that Danny Ainge took sides in those beefs before.
You're still responsible for the personalities you put in them.
And he took sides. Like it's well documented. He took sides in these beefs, which isn't very like I think you should always try your best to be a mediator when you're the GM in these types of beefs. I mean, I just think that's what you should do. And he seems like in the closed doors, he seems like he is a snake. It seems like in closed doors with the way he takes sides. In that aspect. There's another point I was gonna mention too. Oh yeah, I remember we won the 2008 championship, right? We won the 2008 ring, bro, and like we won the chip. And that summer, I was watching ESPN. I was we was youngins at this time. We was 10 years old. I remember watching ESPN, and Danny Ainge was exploring the option of trading Ray Allen and Rajon Rondo for Rodney Stuckey and Rick Hamilton. He explored that option, bro.
I didn't hear that.
No, but it happened, bro. He explored the option of making that trade. I don't know why. First of all, like not only is that a stupid thing personnel wise, like for like just winning for like your winning team for like how the X's and O's works, it's also just dumb. It's also just dumb because you're destroying the locker room. Like, bro, we just won a championship, and my GM's like exploring the option of moving me. You best believe that played a role. That was a planted seed in that beef that ended up happening later down the road between Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce. Because every summer too, Rondo was on the trade block. There was rumors about trading Rondo. I know he had some locker room issues, but there are a lot of guys who have locker room issues, and you don't put them on the trade block every time. That just really makes things worse, if you ask me. If that guy's just like shit, now I'm like on the trade block, and they think I'm replaceable. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think he was the best at really maintaining a conducive, cohesive team in the locker room as well.
I mean, Pierce and Garnett are like still best friends. I mean, they got along with Rondo too. Like,
I know they didn't get along at one point though. Or what?
There was like a 1 year that they had an argument, but they're cool now. Like Ray Allen's like the only one that really.
No one really cares about how they've been off the team for like almost 10 years and talking about when they were there, what was going on. So like everyone can repair. Like,
there's like really only bad blood with Ray though.
Tio and McNabb are boys now too. It doesn't mean like they weren't like freaking
Kobe and Shaq.
Yeah, I mean like, see, that's another thing too. Like when you're a winning team, there's a lot of big personalities there because you're a championship team. You have to really try your best to maintain, that they like each other. I mean, it's a matter of record how some of these guys ended up leaving, and that's not a good look on Ainge. And there was another comment that Ainge made actually today that's really weird. Let me see. Like, so Danny Ainge said he, Kyrie Irving disrespected our franchise. Our players didn't care. I realized I can't connect with this generation of players anymore. And this is something that he cited as the reason for him stepping down as the president of basketball operations for the Boston Celtics.
That's what I was saying. The game has passed him by. Like these players that like have shoe deals and that are on commercials, these superstars that are outspoken politically and shit like that. You need one of these guys. You need
Yeah,
a Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Kyrie
exactly.
Irving, like and if he wants to play this whole like shut up and dribble shit, like we're never gonna win. So yeah, I don't know.
Not
I
only
do
that's a
think
great
Danny
point.
Ainge had some good years. I think overall he was successful, but I think 100% this is the last season that he needs to be involved with the Celtics. But
Yeah, that's a good point. Like it brings out how outdated and like kind of how he kind of has a really like a paternalistic view of how he wants of how the NBA works. And there are other guys in his age group that don't have this view. He was a so that just goes to show how he just by the fact that he didn't do anything with those 6 first round picks to build a super team, that shows you how stubborn he is. He kept trusting his guns or really
yeah, he's
thinking like
really stubborn and prideful.
he just do things his own way, which was
Yeah,
stupid. It just really was moronic. Furthermore, it kind of shows like how he can't really take accountability. Like we already know he's stepping down because the Celtics have underachieved, have been brutal underachievers the past 6, 7 years, 5, 6 years, or if you want to cut it short. And he's citing the way the players didn't care about Kyrie Irving stepping on our logo as the reason why he stepped down. Like no accountability whatsoever. That's just really like that's really granular.
I didn't really even think that logo step was anything. I watched that video like 100
I
times.
don't give a damn, bro. I really don't care.
I
Like
was
it's really just like it's like
people shuffle around like that on basketball courts everywhere. Like I'm not even sure if that was like a stomp or not. Like I don't know.
yeah.
I was
It's
just
like Ellis Hobbs doing the lights out dance on the track.
yeah, it was just like
Whatever, bro. Like who cares?
yeah, that was a little much for me too.
I don't really care. But yeah, that's just like Danny Ainge was a stubborn GM. He he really just he mastered the concept of appeasement. Really where he just they can't say I made a bad move if I don't make a move. That's what he mastered that concept of. He didn't want to step outside his comfort zone. He had 6 extra first round picks that he could have converted into a super team. Given the circumstances, Boston's not an ideal destination as a city, as a marketable city. He knew that he had to trade. That's how he built the '08 team. It just really seems like he was running a complete circus, not circus, but a complete bozo franchise for like 6 years. Like, sure, you were winning, bro, but like this is the Boston Celtics and they plateaued. They plateaued years ago and it wasn't working. And we weren't getting closer any of those years. We just
We
kept
haven't got better since
yeah.
like
It'll
we
be
had
one thing if we got closer, closer, closer. Okay, 5 game series, 7 game series. We're this close. It was just an even level sprints where you weren't getting better. And it's really frustrating as Celtics fans. I think this will go down as a top three, top five biggest disappointment, biggest choke job in Boston sports history. Obviously, we got Bill Buckner between the legs. We got the '07 Super Bowl choke. We got the 1976 New England Patriots that was a favorite against the Raiders in the divisional round, or was it the wild card round? I believe it was the divisional round. It was in the divisional wild card round, but they were favored to win. It was a complete team. They had a great defense, great running game. Steve Rogan was a Pro Bowler that year, and that would have been if we would have beat the Raiders that year, that would have been the first Lombardi in New England. So those are all those.
benching Malcolm Butler and still letting up 500 passing yards. That was a pretty bad choke job too.
I wouldn't put in that level though. Like, it was just it's like and that's it's too late now. It's too late now. Like there's nothing those picks they've all eroded. There's nothing we can do now. We can just hope
You're
that
talking about Devin Booker though, how highly you are on him.
yeah, but we can't trade for him. You think Phoenix there's no way in hell Phoenix is gonna
I
trade.
was trying to segue into your next topic. You want to talk about Devin Booker, how he stacks up amongst young superstars.
Yeah, definitely. So you want to film this as a separate one? I think it's easier if we like stop recording.
Yeah, we could wrap up. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just do one more thing about Danny. So yeah.
Yeah, just like close it.
Yeah. Close it. Really, there's no way to stop a bleeding wound. I mean, what's a good thing to say? The knife's already in the body, and there's no taking the knife out. The everlasting effects are permanent now. All those assets are outdated. All we can hope for now is that maybe we can use our natural picks for a trade, the one that our Celtics owned, or sign a free agent. But it's gonna be super tough. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a Celtics fan. I'm a realist. Given the fact that we're not Miami, we're not LA, we're not Houston, we're not those type of cities, it's gonna be tough getting talent here. And Celtics fans should be very, very, very enraged, infuriated, and just ballistic at Danny Ainge for what he did to our assets. There's no sugarcoating it.
A little flagrant for me there. I think overall Danny Ainge by Celtics fans will be viewed as positive. However, I'm disappointed in Danny Ainge. I personally think we underachieved, and I personally think he needed to step down 3 years ago. However, I am overall satisfied that he brought us a championship. So I consider that a successful tenure, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm of the opinion that championship was more about connections. Kevin McHale was employed there. You was any other GM there? There would be no championship in Boston. I'm gonna be honest. Furthermore, it's just he didn't take the 08 team. He didn't make them more sturdy. He didn't make them more formidable like other GMs would have. And let's not forget, this is the biggest. It's the second biggest ransoms worth of assets we got in that Sixers trade, in that Brooklyn Nets trade, coupled with the Grizzlies picks and some Sixers picks that we got. Completely failed. Complete failure. There's no other way around. Complete failure. We didn't even make it. We didn't even make it NBA Finals, and it was the weakest Eastern Conference in NBA history. We didn't make a single NBA Finals. Complete utter failure. No way other to look at it. That's it. Complete failure with the rebuild. And he was gift wrapped the golden ticket to rebuild us into a super team that no one had ever seen before. We could have done that. We just didn't do it. And as far as Danny Ainge is a con man. Danny Ainge, if you view this video, you are a con man. And you will go down. Like there are two biggest con men in Boston, in Massachusetts history. The first is Whitey Bulge's brother, who was the state senator and was collaborating with the mafia and withheld all that classified information when all these brutal crimes were being committed, and still was an elected official for our government. That's the biggest con, man. Nothing can ever come close to that. So how
Danny Ainge is right there for you. He's number two.
Danny Ainge is a distant, but Danny Ainge is a distant second, but he is number two for the biggest con man in Massachusetts history.
I don't know, man. I think you're overselling it, but
it's just those assets, bro. And we were asset rich, and some people say you're asset rich, cash poor. We were asset rich and cash rich, and we couldn't build a championship team out of that.
Yeah.
And even with the Kemba Walker thing, we gave him $30 million for no reason. We overpaid Gordon Hayward. James Harden even said there was actually the James Harden deal this season as well. Danny Ainge admitted that the Rockets want us to give up Jaylen Brown, and Marcus Smart for James Harden and some picks, and that was the green light. They would have made the deal, and Danny Ainge turned it down. That's terrible. I'm not even gonna talk about how stupid that is. He didn't make that move. Coupled with the fact that even if you had issues of him maybe not wanting to re-sign, I don't even know when his contract is though. But hey, Danny, what if you didn't overpay Gordon Hayward and Kemba Walker? You know how much extra cash you could have thrown at James Harden?
Oh yeah, you could flash him $50 million a year.
Yeah. Great job, Danny Ainge, bro. Thank you for completely, wasting.
Slap it up.
Torturing Boston Celtics fans since 2013. And thank you for removing us from our misery by having the decency to step down when you know damn well you can't get the job done. Just thank you for, wasting, just, being a complete tease. You were a bigger tease than Jay Cutler was in Chicago. Thank you for being that big of a tease since 2013. And really keeping us at the 2-yard line. You held us at the 2 yard line worse than Pete Carroll did. When
Marshawn
he
Lynch.
didn't hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch. Thank you, Danny. And
Thanks, Danny.
I hope you see this. And number 2 to Whitey Bulger's brother for the biggest comment in Massachusetts history, Daniel Osmani saying it, bro. So, like, just thank you. I'll holler at you later.